thanks. Thanks a million for coming on. It's great to get to talk to you. I actually think we talked about doing an episode like I'd say about like 2 and a bit years ago or 2 years ago. So it's good. It's good to get you on. I think so. Obviously, you're good at CrossFit, and that's like appealing to someone like me. But I think what drew me to you originally was you moved. I think you were maybe you just moved home. It was like during lockdown, I think, and maybe you just moved home, but you put up a story of like your coffee machine that you're moving it from one place to another place. And I was like, okay, so I need to have a conversation with this guy. Um, so you've one of those rocket espressos, do you? Or
Uh,
what do you
Lamazocco.
call it? La Marzocco. Where'd you get that, or when did you get that?
I got it from Lamazocco direct, and I ordered it before we left Abu Dhabi to come back, so it was there waiting for us.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah,
Oh, that's cool. And how
yeah,
did you find? Because obviously, like, say I use a Sage Barista, so it's essentially like push a button.
yeah.
There's a little bit more to it, but you can only control so much. So, like, did it piss you off for the first like 2 or 3 months, or did you immediately just settle into it?
Oh no, I loved it. I think the hard thing was just I think I wound Jamie up because the first day we got it, I must have spent 4 hours trying to like get all the ratios right that I'd read about, and get it all. I had a little notebook where I'd write down, you know, the grind set into the bean and stuff like that. Just trying to learn as much as possible as early as possible, so that it was easy, so I didn't mess anything up.
And what's your drink of choice from it then?
Oh, it changes, but I like black coffee. I don't really do milky coffee unless I get like I like an iced almond flat white in the winter or whatever. But otherwise, either a double espresso or a long black with an extra shot. I like
An
my coffee strong.
iced almond flat white in the winter.
No, in the summer. Sorry.
Okay, in the summer. Okay, right.
Yeah.
I was yeah. Okay, maybe in our winter, southern hemisphere summer.
Yeah.
Maybe that's. Um. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Because did you? So you lived in Abu Dhabi. How long did you live there for?
7.5 years. So 2014 until last February. So yeah, 2021.
Wow. What age are you now?
I'm 29 now.
Okay. So you're quite young, like very young when you
Yeah,
moved over,
I
really.
moved on my 21st birthday.
Okay. And was that um like why did you move?
So I had competed in regionals in 2014, and I was obviously trying to decide how I was going to keep doing CrossFit, um, but also, yeah, find work basically. Um, and I remember before regionals on the CrossFit UK Facebook page, some guy had put a advert up about like a job in the Middle East or whatever, and thought nothing of it. And then somebody actually came into the gym that I was at the time and was like, "Oh, you should apply for this job. You're looking for a job because you've just finished uni and stuff, and yeah, you should apply for this job." So I messaged them, and they were like, "Oh, the positions have been filled." And then a week later, somebody who had filled the position said that they couldn't come out that year; they'd have to come out the year after. And that was it. I mean, I'd studied sports coaching. I love coaching. My passion was coaching. I wanted to become a coach, but there weren't many opportunities in the UK at the time to try and make a living from it.
Yeah.
So that was a great opportunity to go and be the first coach, or one of the first coaches at this new box in the Middle East. So I actually went to Dubai on holiday in July and met the owners of the gym, went to Abu Dhabi, and then started in August.
Where are you from originally? England.
Worcester in England, yeah, but I went to uni in Cardiff.
Worcester. Is that like the sauce? No, Worcester.
Yeah, Worcestershire sauce, exactly.
Okay, right, okay. Um, is the sauce from there?
Yeah, Liam Perrins, yeah.
Is it like a factory?
There is.
Okay.
Can't
Is
say I've ever
this,
been, but I have seen it before.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not
same
sure
as
how I'm not sure how interesting that line of questioning was, to be honest. I'll
oh,
just breeze past that. So you studied coaching in college.
at Cardiff Met University. Yeah,
Okay. How far is Worcester from Cardiff?
like 2 hours, 90 minutes, not too far.
Okay. So Worcester's like West Midlands?
West Midlands, yeah, yeah.
Okay, right, okay.
It's like close to Hereford, and then Hereford's on the border between Wales and England.
I'll be honest, I'm fucking chuffed with that geography. Okay, and So you what about growing up then? Were you sporty? Like, did you do other sports when you were younger?
Yeah, so squash was my main sport. So I
Oh,
played
okay.
squash from probably, oh, I don't know when I started, but until I was kind of 15, 16. And then just as I was getting into sixth form, I had to make the decision because I used to be in an academy that was an hour away, half an hour away from school, but then an hour away from home. So 3 nights a week, I'd go from school 30 minutes to this academy and then an hour back home. And basically, the school got to the point where I think they spoke to my parents and, like, well, he's not doing homework, he's tired in school or whatever it might be. And so I had to kind of make the decision. And my decision actually ended up being based on we had applied to be in the, I can't remember if it was the Commonwealth or the Olympics that year. And we lost the bid. So I was like, well, if I'm not going to compete at a high level, like I should probably focus on school more than squash.
Where did squash come from? Is that like did your dad play it or your mum play it or something?
Yeah, my parents have always played racket sport, so I think they started with badminton when they were younger, and then took up squash. My dad was on like the committee and helped build a squash and tennis club in Stourport, close to where I live. So
Okay.
just growing up, we were just always playing racket sports, and yeah, so played squash and then dabbled in golf. And but when I quit squash, I started rugby. So I started rugby a little bit late, but then really got passionate for rugby after quitting squash, and kind of that filled my time then.
What age are you in sixth form? What age is that?
Sixth form was the last 2 years at school, so that would have been like
16,
17,
17. Okay.
17 years. So I think I quit squash when I was 14 and then started rugby.
And what level rugby are like local club is that what we're talking or
Yeah. I got to like West Midlands or whatever, but I was never, you know, I always struggled with like, I was quite short and fat at the time, so I played hooker. So all my skill sets were good, but just the skills that I missed out on, like tackling practice and stuff like that when I was younger, like my handling skills were good and all that, and my scrummaging skills were good. But yeah, I was never like that good.
yeah, I played rugby for a while. I just found it so confusing. Like I'm not very sporty, but I remember the moment where I was like, fuck this was I was playing, we were at a training session and I clashed shins with someone. And like
The
honestly
shit
thought
was the
I
worst.
thought I broke my leg. I was like, this is the worst pain I've ever felt. And they were
Right.
just like, oh, it's fine, you just bang shins. And I was like, this is fine. I was like, fuck this, I'm out. Like, I
Yeah.
was like, if this happens in training, what is the point?
Yeah.
But I'll never forget the feeling I had while playing matches, just being like, I have literally no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, who am I supposed to be looking at here? And then I just be like, being like ushered into a position to stand in and be like, I assume it's this guy right in front of me. Then that's my problem. Like, yeah, no, I think I'm any kind of. It's the same in workouts. If there's a workout that requires thought, it's like, oh, this is this isn't going to go well.
Yeah.
Um, and then so you played rugby, and then what? So was it like your parents must have been quite what's the word I'm looking for? Like
Committed.
yeah, like more so than just getting you to play sport. They
Oh,
because like I want to encourage my kids to play sport, but they obviously encouraged you to, I guess, like play it in a considered way or whatever. Like if you were already at 14, 15 thinking like, well, if I'm not going to be at that level, what's the point? Like you obviously recognize your ability in it and the potential that you had for doing something in it, but you don't lick that off the ground. Like, like you have to be kind of is that coaches at the academy and stuff or your parents or both?
yeah. I think it's a combination of everything. I think um, I've always been extremely passionate about sport, and it's always been the one thing that has kind of been my um, like my leveler as such. Like where I go to, just like I really just love it. But I also love competing, and because I felt that I was like good at these things as well. I think yeah, it's just a combination of everything. And my old man is just an absolute workhorse, and he instilled that, and so is my mum. But they instilled that kind of mentality that if you're going to do something, you're going to do it properly, kind of thing. And I think I've always got to the point in some sports where I've like, well, I could do this to my best of my ability, but is there something that I could be better at? And that's kind of the same with rugby, because even when I went to uni, I mean, the coaches obviously saw something in me because I was captain of the freshers team. But I quit rugby because I fell out of love with it, with the drinking culture and stuff at uni. Um, and then just bodybuilding just wasn't fulfilling me. And that's actually why I went to CrossFit, because I loved the team sport dynamic. I loved the working hard for others. I loved putting the effort in. Um, and then when I went to CrossFit, that's what filled that gap for me, really, is just that you're competitive, but there's also that camaraderie. There's something different all the time, something to be better at. You can see if you're improving straight away. You don't need to wait until your next competition when you play the same player that you lost to last time or whatever it may be. You know if you can get one more strict pull up or one more muscle up or whatever it may be.
Hmm.
You know?
So what year then is that? Like 2012 CrossFit then?
2013. So I went to uni in 2011. So I want to say I started in October or September of 2012. But I actually, and I think this set me up for success in coaching, is one of the very first things I did in CrossFit when I wanted to start getting better was break my wrist. So from not listening to the coach. So I basically stopped, and then started again in 2013, or late 2013. I was basically doing a clean, and the coach was like, "Oh yeah, you're strong, well done, but your technique's a little bit off. Don't go any heavier." And I was like, "Oh, I've got one more," and I just landed with it, my elbow on my knee, and just
I
snapped.
did that.
And snapped my wrist and broke my scaphoid, and spent 3 months in a cast, and then another 3 months rehabbing. And
Yeah, God, I didn't break it now, but I probably wasn't going heavy enough. But I did the
yeah,
exact same thing, and to this day, the physics of it don't make sense. Like, how did I land with my elbow on my knee, and like it just doesn't add up in my head. But yeah,
yeah,
that was off. It was that we had like Seeka Strength were here, and they were doing like a workshop, and they're like, "Oh, we're going to do cleans," and we'd done so many lifts. Like I was just exhausted from it's more than I'd ever done. Not even heavy, just like repetition, repetition, repetition. And my body obviously just went like, sorry, brain, I don't understand what you're asking me to do. And then it all just fell apart. Wow, okay. So you got injured, you started
13 probably.
2013-ish, late 2013, and made regionals in 2014.
Yeah, yeah. So that was my second competition, like individual competition.
And where was that in Spain?
Copenhagen. No,
Oh, Copenhagen, okay.
yeah, back in the old school Europe.
And are you like when you qualify, like do you because like back then obviously CrossFit was a bit of a different beast than it is now. Um like it was a lot more, I don't know, like kind of rough and ready, I suppose, and it was kind of still in its competitive infancy, I suppose, relative to now anyway. Like less polished, I guess. And like when you start doing that and you have that experience of like being coached and like kind of rebelling against it a little bit, getting smacked in the face because of it and then having to come back, are you like when you qualify for that, are you like, oh brilliant, this makes total sense? Or are you like, oh fuck, I shouldn't be here, like I'm not ready kind of thing? Or how do you react to it?
Yeah, it's funny. So that year, I was totally driven just by making it to regionals, because I didn't really consider myself as an athlete as such. I still had aspirations. My actual aspirations were to be a red shirt, a level one SEM staff at the time, because it tied in with coaching. But I
Yeah.
was just thinking that I could, be like the old school James Hobart, where he was a coach but got to train and stuff as well. Um, but yeah, I just remember just being so dead set on making regionals, maybe having a couple of tantrums during the open workouts, and everyone's thinking, "Fucking hell, who's this guy? I think he's like mint or whatever." And then, yeah, I made it, and it just became apparent then where my weaknesses and stuff lay as such, in terms of just my skill set. Like I was clearly fit enough at the simple kind of grindy workouts. I did really well. Like I actually came, I think, third in the chipper workout, which made me show that I had the capacity, but just none of my skill sets were there in terms of lifting and gymnastics. So um, then it was like, right, how am I now going to get to the games, basically? But it was
And
just an awesome experience. It meant a lot to me. I've always been passionate and worn my heart on my sleeve. Funny story, actually. Anthony, who's my best mate, co-coach at Yas for 7 years. The first time I met him was actually me crying after the last event of 2014 regionals because I couldn't finish the workout. and he didn't know me, and fair play to him. He just came up to me. He was like, "Mate, what's the matter?" And I was like, "I fucking embarrassed myself. I'm just sat out there and like everyone's cheering me on. I hate it." And he was just like, "Oh mate, don't be daft, like you're doing well, all this." And yeah, so that was my first regionals experience.
yeah, I God, I can't. There has to be an awful lot of people that have had a similar end to. just a competition, I think, of like I think of, and I know she handled it pretty well, but like say Lucy Campbell at the games when she couldn't, like when there was just a breakdown with the cleans, or all the
Yeah.
people that couldn't do single unders, or like it's an awful thing to think of. Like when you was that appearance at regionals, was that the kind of thing that solidified in your head of like, okay, well, we'll tackle that last workout in a minute, but like in general, the experience of getting there and like holding your own in certain workouts, was that the thing that solidified in your head of like, oh, I could be really good at this? Or do you think you already had that before you went there?
No, uh, I think my dreams have always been bigger than what necessarily but like I've always aspired to do more than what necessarily I think that I can, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, so I've always said, like this is my dream, this is what I want to do, and I'll try and do everything that I can. But then there's always been a lack of belief as well. So even though I qualified and it was like, okay, well I could be good at this, it didn't necessarily go like, oh well, I am good at this. It was more of a just, we'll keep on working towards what your dream is, and yeah, it's a funny one. Just kind of like, I guess, put it out there and hope that if you put the work in, it's going to be enough.
And like, does the third place in the chipper, does that do enough to counteract the feeling? I
No,
kind of feel like if
I always, I always focus more on my. I'm always renowned for it. Even now, is I always focus on the things that didn't go well as opposed to the things that did, which is something that I'm working on. So straight away, it was like, okay, well, where were the weaknesses in this weekend, and what do I need to improve? And I was more highlighting those things than focusing on my strengths.
But even like if that workout had been first over the weekend, you at least would have had a chance to like, gain confidence. But like when that's the thing you're walking away from, it's going to wash everything else anyway.
Yeah, yeah, true.
Um, so when you go back then to training, are you like fired up? Are you disheartened? Like what way are you feeling afterwards?
Well, the funny thing was actually after regionals that year, was obviously the year that I moved to Abu Dhabi. So everything moved pretty quickly after that because,
Mm.
um, yeah, I remember going on holiday with my girlfriend at the time, coming back, trying to figure out what I was going to do, then getting this job offer, so going to Dubai on holiday to go meet them, and then moving. So really, I didn't even think about competing or training or anything. Like it was more about what I'm going to do to earn some money, and start living as opposed to being an athlete. And even then, in the first year at Yas, um, we did competitions and there was a great environment, but there was never this like, oh, we're all doing this to go to the games. It was more, yeah, that was never really, that didn't become the focus for me really until team 2016 and then individual post 2017 then.
And did you meet Jamie in Yaz?
Yeah, so Anthony and myself were the first two coaches, and Jamie actually was a PT for a home personal training company, and she just joined the gym to come and do open gym. And I just remember, and Fraggle actually worked at front reception, and I just remember we were all just like, "Fucking hell, that girl looks good." So then the next day, someone was like, "Yeah, she's been to regionals." So then we went online and see that she had been to the Australia regionals in 2014, and then she started training with us. And then we needed a female coach, so the boys employed her, and then the rest is history.
A home PT company in Abu Dhabi. That must have been fucking lucrative.
Oh
When I
mate,
say there was serious money in that.
it's a big business because
Yeah,
everyone's got some form of equipment or home gyms in their house. So home personal training is a big thing in the Middle East.
yeah. Even just I'd say the amount of like, what would you call it, discretionary funds that they have to pay for something like, I just say it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Um, okay, and then how? So were ye in? When did you become a couple? Then when did you get into a relationship?
So October 2014, I remember, um, yeah, started seeing Jay, and then was just like that Christmas I was actually going home because it was my first year there, and Jay was going to stay in Abu Dhabi, so I was just like, oh, do you want to come to the UK for the first time? And that was when really we were like proper dating.
Hmm. Oh, so like 8 years then.
Yeah, oh, yeah, we've been together a long time. Yeah,
It's a really long time, yeah.
yeah.
Um, and then like, because I'm trying to. One of the things I was thinking about, like when I knew you were coming on, was the dynamic of two people competing with similar aspirations to each other, competing in the same sport, but like it because it's unusual. I guess like in the off season, you can probably support each other a lot, and you can probably like decide what you're going like what competitions you're going to do and stuff, and kind of work around each other a bit. But then when it comes to like say February, April, May slash June, and then like August, the it's kind of out of your control who does what where to a large extent, especially with her having to go back to Oceania and stuff. But like, is it difficult both of ye competing in the same sport, or is it like kind of second nature because it's been your whole relationship has had it?
Yeah, it's interesting. People always ask this, and it's funny as well because we obviously from that 2014 year we've worked together, lived together, competed together. Like we spend every pretty much waking moment together, but it just works.
Mm.
And I can say I mean, obviously I was a lot younger, but if you tried to tell me to do that with any ex-girlfriend, it's just not possible. But for us, it works. And in terms of competing, last year was actually the first year where it was more challenging because I couldn't go to Oceania with Jay, or she couldn't. And we weren't together during that time. But in terms of how it worked in 2017 and 18, for example, we were both in the Europe region or the Meridian region or whatever it was called. Um, and us competing at the same time is actually quite good because it means that we know we physically can't watch each other, but in between events we are together. So
Mm.
we're focused on ourselves. And it's only those times. The worst possible time for me is watching Jay compete and I'm not competing, because if I'm competing, I'm focused on myself and I'm looking forward to seeing her after. But if I'm not competing, obviously it's like watching your favorite sports team, like the emotions you get, the roller coaster. So managing it is actually a lot easier when we're competing at the same time.
Is it easier then as well when she has to go to Australia to compete and you have to stay at home and compete and you're not able to be like physically present? Is that easier, do you think?
No, I think, I mean, I can't speak for Jamie, but I think that she likes to have me there when she's competing. So I think from that perspective, it was a lot harder for her. I also like to be there for her. Um, and yeah, it was different this year, especially in my back because I was Jamie went to an actually having, so I was in trying to stay out of total misery of rehabbing and being away from Jay for that long and stressing about her and stressing about me trying to compete. So this year was really, really challenging. But when she went in 2019 to Australia to compete, there was less on the line because she'd already qualified. But I was, in a good place in London. I knew Jay was fine and enjoying herself as well. So um, I could see it being less of an issue. It's just the extent of what's on the line, I suppose, being separate at the biggest point of your season
Mm.
when every day in training we're there for one another, and for competitions we're used to being there for one another as well.
Um, so she got injured after 2019.
So no, so she got injured literally within a month of us moving to the UK to be to be professional athletes last year. So we landed in February, and I think the start of March, like the week before the Open, she did a shoulder or the second. Yeah, yeah,
Um, and then
2021.
so you moved home from Abu Dhabi to Wales,
We have moved to Wales. Yeah.
and why Wales?
So Andy has been Andy Edwards, who owns Dragon Athletic. That's who I trained with when I was at university. That was who Jamie's been with since 2015, coaching. And in terms of like the athlete life and the resources that are available to us, it's a great city for us as athletes.
what's the, because obviously I assume a move like that is filled with like hope and like positivity and like this is it now, like this is all our ducks are in a row and it's all going to line up perfectly, and then within a couple of weeks there's like a catastrophe. Like how do you kind of, like, it's quite a large speed bump to overcome. Like
Oh yeah.
how do you get past it?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, in hindsight, January, February was not the time to move. In terms of the timing of the season, I don't think uh, I hadn't anticipated how challenging I would find the transition from moving from the Middle East to the UK. Even just in like logistics with, like bills and like adult stuff that I've not had
Yeah.
to do in so long and all that. And then obviously Jay doing her shoulder. But it's life, it's one of those things where it could have happened when we were in Abu Dhabi, um, all the same, and it still would have been challenging. But obviously, we would have been in a familiar location, and we'd have been in a place that we called home, not in this new place where you move to be an athlete and then you can't do. So it was challenging, and it was actually probably more challenging for me than it was for Jamie, because obviously, once you've got an injury, you've got to accept your season's over. But for me, it was like trying to manage myself to go to the to be the best athlete I can be whilst caring about Jamie. So I probably struggled more last year with that. But yeah, it's just life, isn't it? I mean, we've said the last 2 years we've not qualified for the games, and everyone could say, well, it's since you've moved to Cardiff. But then, if one of us would have qualified the last 2 years, Cardiff could be the best place in the world. It's just one of those things. You got to take it for what it is and learn the lessons from what you're doing well and what you're not doing so well. And if it was the place, I think we would know that. But it's just one of those things.
Yeah, I mean, there's like, people always look for a narrative, I suppose, don't they? They always look for like a, you know,
There's a
like
lot.
I
There's
think
a lot of people messaging me saying, "Come back to Abu Dhabi." It's clearly not working.
I'd say, yeah. And then because you were at Strength and Depth this year,
I was,
and that was your
unfortunately.
that was, but that's like a home crowd. That's the first time.
Honestly, and like, sorry to cut in, like for me, DFC is a home crowd.
Okay.
And this is a funny thing, is like I still see the Middle East as my home.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess that's what's happened as a result of my growth in CrossFit coming when I lived in the Middle East. Like,
Yeah, your
uh,
formative years were there, really.
yeah, and also like just little things as well, where it's like, when you get the title of fittest in the UK, for example, from living in up until this year, just from living in the Middle East, I haven't got that title because I've not lived in the Middle East, because I've been
Yeah.
seen not as a British athlete, for example. Um, and it's just little things like that. Like, I think there was a slight disconnect between me and the UK community as such. And obviously there are some people, rightly so, that have been here the whole time and that have, helped to build the UK up, whereas I was probably helping to build the UAE up more than the UK. So I hope, there's one of the things that was kind of on my mind and always has been on my mind, is where I fit into the UK community. And one of the things that I was interested to see at Strength in Depth, to see if that support for me was there, if that makes sense.
And what did you think?
Oh, it was awesome. Yeah, it's just me building stupid things up in my head.
Yeah, because I was actually like, it is interesting that you say that, because I was impressed with um the difference between the European regionals and what I had seen of the North American ones, where like you could have, say, like, you're from the West Midlands, you've got Reggie from the North or whatever coming and competing in London, which on paper should have an element of disconnect, like between the North, the
Mm.
West, and then the South or whatever. And if you compare that to, like, I don't know, Mac, and you have someone coming from Boston, like, there is no ownership there of, like, the Mac crowd aren't going to give a fuck about someone from Boston unless it's someone who's already famous or whatever. Whereas, like, once the UK crowd hear a UK name, They don't care if it's someone they know, don't know, it's famous, not famous. They don't care. Like they just want, like
Yeah.
it is remarkable. And you see the same. I saw the same at Lowlands where there'd be like a Dutch athlete would do well, the crowd would go crazy. Then like a Swede, like they don't care once it's
Mm.
from their country or whatever. Whereas I think because we talked before we started recording about the gap in America and stuff, just geographically, like the vastness of it, it really lends itself to that kind of like divide, I suppose, or that kind of like I think there's a lack of ownership, or there's less ownership of athletes there, just because they're from the country. Whereas in the UK, it's like if you're from the UK, you're one of them. Do you know what I mean? And the
Yeah.
same in Ireland. If you're Irish, it doesn't matter what part of the island you're on. Once you're on the island, you're Irish, and it's interesting, because it was something that you know I was kind of curious, like, how is this going to play out? Like, how is a London crowd going to react to like people
And
from
it's yeah, and it's
different
interesting
parts?
because I think that there are obviously people that would still have their their favourites within the UK, but then they'd still favour the
Yeah,
UK athletes above everyone else, and that's always how it's going to be. You're gonna like Liverpool or Man United, but then when they're all playing for England, you support England. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's
You're gonna like Liverpool or Man United, but when they're playing for England, you're just gonna complain about it anyway. So
yeah,
what does
well,
it matter?
exactly. Yeah. It's like,
um,
like you could be a massive Zach fan. So when Zach and Reggie had that really close finish, I think in the snatch workout or whatever,
hmm,
if Zach wins, they might be happy that Zach won, but then they then want Reggie to come second.
yeah,
Then
yeah,
everyone there's still a support for both athletes.
yeah. When I said you're at strength and depth, you said unfortunately. Why did you say that?
Uh yeah, just I say unfortunately. I mean, I competed at strength and depth purely for mental resilience, because I knew that physically the outcome was very unlikely. So, like
This is you. You had a back injury, wasn't it?
yeah, so 6 weeks prior to strength and depth, I tore a ligament in my back, and the only reason I competed is because the physios told me that my body technically will have healed, but I obviously wouldn't be prepared optimally. And then just from a mindset perspective, I wanted to quit because it was the easy way out, and because I was, you know, it was looking like the result would be um, not the result I was hoping for. But then I've done this sport for 10 years, and who knows if I turn up and give it my best effort, what could happen. So
Mm.
I competed with the glimmer of possibility that I could make it work, and that I could qualify. And those glimmers were there, but unfortunately the depth's too good now. And if you're underprepared and you've not done enough conditioning, or you're not, in the shape that you should be in, you're gonna pay for it. But I mean, I'm not to take away from any other lads, but I'm pretty proud of myself for nearly coming top 10 with 6 weeks of no training.
Yeah, like d- I'm just like, and there's no, I'm not. I never judge anyone for what they say or how they say it or anything, but I'm curious. Like, is there a reason that you didn't say you were injured before the competition, say publicly, and is there a reason that you felt you had to say you were injured after the competition?
Um, yeah. So yeah, and no, it's a good question, because I think for me, um, that's the whole thing with media and social media in general, right? Is what you what you want to put out to the public versus what you feel you should put out to the public versus all these things. And it was one of those things where I don't believe in excuses, so I would never use it as an excuse for not qualifying, which is why I didn't say going in. And also because from a mindset perspective, you almost want to trick yourself into believing that there's nothing wrong.
Hmm.
And then on top of that, you also don't want to give another competitor the opportunity, not that they would in CrossFit, but the opportunity to, have a little dig, or whatever it may be, or, try and get in your head. And then in terms of the post competition, the reason I felt that I should post in the end was actually to try and help others to understand what you can get through. as opposed to making as an excuse, because
Mm.
you know it wasn't an excuse, it was a fact. As such, as I'm not saying I didn't qualify because of my back, because who knows if I'd have qualified or not. But the point was that you can feel every day like you want to quit something, and that everything's against you, but just the power of will and the power of surrounding yourself with a good team, you can still go and give it your best efforts. And for me, I learned more from doing that than I would have from quitting, which is why I wanted to share it, because quitting would have been the easy way. And yeah, I could be sat here going like, look, guys, I pulled out because I got a back injury. Everyone's like, yeah, great, no worries, you have the season out. But then for me personally, going into next year, um, there's always that what if I could have qualified through adversity? What if I get injured this year? How am I going to approach? Like, it's a new thing now. Like, do I just rest for 6 weeks and then carry on, or do I push through? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's weighing up all those options. But in terms of like publicly putting out there, I totally understand, because that's the game with social media as well, isn't it? Right? Like, what do you want to tell people versus what do you think you should tell people? And it is something that I struggle with all the time, which is why I go in peaks and troughs with social.
Yeah, but it is interesting. And again, I don't mean it to sound like I'm judging you for putting it out. Like,
Not at all.
I think it's remarkable that you carried on and competed. And I think the sensible way, or you're kind of blinkering yourself by not saying it public, because then it's all you're going to be fucking asked about on the lead up to it is how's the back, and that's not going to help. But I think it is important to say afterwards, oh, like, I was actually injured. Like, not even for ego purposes, but like, I suppose, like, internally for ego, to be like, now everyone knows that I was injured, and look how well I still did despite the fact that I was injured. So what can
But
I do next season? Like,
then that's almost like the worst thing as well, because like from my personal perspective as well, is like, I hate to make excuses, and I hate
yeah.
to see somebody who look like makes it out to be an excuse.
But I think there's a big difference between an excuse. An excuse is, to me, an excuse is a black and white picture, and like, I, I didn't qualify because, like, that's an excuse, like,
Yeah,
but like, there was no element of that to your. I don't want to call it an
I'm
announcement
glad.
because it makes it
I'm
sound
glad that's how
contrived.
it came across, because I have many sleepless nights about what I put on Instagram and how people
Yeah.
perceive them.
Once you avoid black and white pictures,
Yeah, yeah,
black and white pictures and like sad, like looking down at the ground or that kind of thing. Once you
exactly.
avoid
And
that,
it's one of those things as well, right? Isn't it? Whereas it's like, if you didn't qualify because you didn't put the effort in, and then that's your problem. But if you didn't qualify because you weren't good enough at the time, then
yeah.
you just got to
But I
get better.
think, when it comes to excuses, everybody could have an excuse, but your excuse could vary on a scale from I didn't try hard enough in workout number 2 to I, underestimated that person in workout number 4 to I'm, miscalculated or whatever. I think as like excuses, not that it's what you're looking for, but I think an injury is like ranks pretty highly on the scale. Um, like, sticking with social media then, because like, I have a thing with European athletes and, not getting the spotlight that I think they deserve because of the audience size, I guess, and the focus that's on certain parts of the world compared to other parts of the world. Like, um you look at, say, Carrie Pierce, close to 500,000 followers, and then you look at, you, and you've got like about 1/10, I'd say, of what she has in a following, but you've been around as long, if like debatably longer, like as long anyway.
I wouldn't like to be compared to Carrie though, because she's very, very, very successful. I
No,
think.
but do you know what I mean? It's like that there's this like there's a discrepancy between
I think,
focus.
yeah, like, I think a good comparison maybe like someone like Yone, for example, who's got, I don't know, somewhere like probably around 70, 80.
Yeah.
and then maybe someone like Khan, who's probably got 250,000, maybe.
Yeah.
Yone has been to the games similar, maybe more times, finished higher placing. But I think it just comes down to what you want to do with social media, right? Like if you compare me and Zach, for example, like Zach and I are very different people on social media. And you're going to get a different following base and based on what you put out as well. I mean, I try not to look too much into following.
But like like I know that it's not the be all and end all, and it's not the aim of what you're doing, and it's not the aim of what a lot of athletes are doing, but like it pays the bills, as in like you can see um you can see the benefits of having a large following, because you can then turn around, or your agent or manager or whoever can turn around and say like, oh, you want to work with X, well, he or she has X amount of followers or X amount of engagement or whatever, which like it or not is something that's important to these companies and to these businesses and stuff. So then as a direct result of that, it then sort of has to be important to the athlete as well. Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of like, it's like that you're saying about what do you want to say, what do they want to hear, what do you want to tell them, what do you not want to tell them. There is an element of game playing where like you have to wrestle the beast. Like you can't just ignore it and like not care about it, because it does put a roof over your head in parts, like.
Yeah, but then it also depends on what your measurement or metric of success is and what your values are as well, in terms of like, because I know, without sounding big-headed, like I know I could market myself a lot more than I do. I know that I could do more to gain a following. I know I could work with more brands, but that's also not what I'm about. Like I don't care for having more money than what keeps me comfortable. I actually value trying to stay grateful in times of hardships and happiness over success and monetary gain. So over the years, I've turned down quite a few opportunities which could have been lucrative, and to get more following based on the fact that I don't think it fits with who I am. And I think it just depends on if you want to play the game or not. Because for me personally now, especially in this social media where it's favoring certain types of accounts, like I'm actually looking at it from a perspective of, do I want to be an athlete on social media? Do I want to be a coach on social media? Or do I just want to be myself? But if I'm going to do that from a trying to put myself out there, I need to make sure that to get engagement, that I'm providing value to my follower, right? Like how am I going to get my values, my beliefs across to a follower, but give them something that is making their life better, and but also, do I want to do that? Do I want to put content out there to really help you in your day, but is that taken away from me in my day? Do you know what I mean? And that's the constant balance, because I will never sell my soul for a product I don't believe in. I'll never post about something I don't believe in, and whether I get engagement or not because of it is, I've got to live with it.
Yeah, I like you, Elliot. You're a good guy. Yeah, there's a lot of there that,
Mate, you
I
could have
mean,
a 2 hour. We could have a full day's conversation just on social media.
yeah, but it is remarkable, especially in CrossFit. Like you see, like I've
It's
heard
the
some of the
only
amounts.
sport, right? Sorry to interrupt you, but it's the only sport where you can have more follower and be more successful on social media than you can be at being good at the sport.
It's crazy, but I've heard some amounts bandied about for people, um, like money that people got for, from different brands and stuff, and it's like they haven't done any, like they haven't, like I've never seen them standing on top of a podium or anything. Well, I mean, there's only been like fucking 3 people in the last whatever 50 years that have stood on top of the podium, but you know what I mean? It's like they haven't, and it's just mad, like it's mad, like insane amounts of money. And then you hear people talking about like, oh, they need to increase the prizes for competing. And it's like, do they? Like, I think there's a pretty good market there. If like, it depends. Like you say, it's what type of person do you want to be? Do you want to be, successful and have a lucrative career? or do you want to be competitive and like successful in the arena rather than, you know, like outside of it or whatever, I guess. And or can you balance both? Like there's a few people that have managed to balance both, but you know it's not easy. But then say the brands, like, you know, you can downplay it a bit if you want, but I think it speaks volumes how picky you are and how reluctant you are to engage with brands, the brands that you do pick to work with then. And then the, I guess, the reciprocation of that faith. Like you look at, say, like you've been a go-out athlete for a long time,
Yeah.
and the easy thing for them to do when we'll say for the last, you're at the games in 2019, 2020, well, 2020 was kind of just fucked up anyway. But like say 2021 wouldn't have been seen, um, depending on your metrics, as a successful year for you. And then 2022, the same, like again, not a successful year, like depending on your metrics. So the easy thing for them, for Thibaut or whoever to say is like, I just, you know, there's more successful people out there. But it shows the value in what you're saying, the fact that you are picky about what you do and who you do it with, that loyalty is then repaid.
Yeah, so the thing for me is building relationships with people and sharing the same values as them, because then I think they'll reciprocate those things for you. Like I've been very fortunate with the sponsors that I've got, but I also think that is a result of yeah who I am as a person and the relationships that I've built with people, and I'm very fortunate that they keep supporting me because like you said, the last 2 years, based on my metrics, haven't been successful in terms of the outcome, the results. But then I know that if I continue to do what I'm doing in the path that I'm on, that I will, you know, continue my trajectory that I was on from 16, 17, 18, 19, you know, 20. So, um, and that's the thing. I think if you're authentically you and you are the same with all of you know in every aspect of your life, then you are going to attract the same type of brands and people to work with you. And I think that's why I've been really fortunate with the sponsors that I've got because um yeah, I mean, you know, like if you're picking on it from somebody who's interested in looking, then it obviously shows that there's some consistency there, you know.
Well, it's just, it adds gravitas to it. Like it adds gravitas when someone says,
I also still can't believe that I'm kind of sponsored by some of the people that I'm sponsored. Maybe
yeah,
that
well, I
helps.
mean, it,
Maybe
like
that helps a little bit.
it probably says a lot, about the type of person you are and the impact that you've had on people, that you sign a contract with Noble in probably like one of, I guess, like a trough in your career, like competitively, like, you know, that speaks volumes.
Yeah.
um
It was good for my confidence.
yeah. But like, you know, say with GoWad, when I see you talking about GoWad, I kind of think like, oh, he actually uses it every day and he sees the benefit from it. Whereas there are other people who talk about other products. And again, it's playing the game and I don't judge anyone for it. But it just washes over me because I'm like, that's literally meaningless, because last week they were talking about something else, or like last week that clothing range was the best thing they've ever touched in their life, and now it's a piece of dog shit and doesn't matter, and this other thing's the best thing, you know, like it's the fickleness of it or whatever
Yeah,
really highlights people like you then, who only ever talk about like one or two things and that's it, and it's like doesn't go away. It doesn't, like, there's a thing, I get really annoyed if someone's like, if someone's being coached by someone or using a product and they won't shut up about it, and then all of a sudden stop talking about it. I'm like, hang on, I've been invested in this like relationship. I have put in time and effort listening to you talk about this thing or this person. You can't just like not talk about them anymore. Right? You have to say, oh, I've actually left, like, or my contract ran up, or, you know, you have to give some kind of closure to it. Like,
yeah,
that's a bugbear with me on social media. But
yeah. And I
um
think that's the same for me, which is why, again, like I would, even if it would benefit me in some other way, I would not want to project something that I don't personally use or believe out there. And I think that might be the coach in me, and that might be the person in me that wants the best for the people that I'm coaching and that I'm trying to not influence, but you know what I mean, like
mm,
help out. Is that, you know, this is what I use, this is what I believe in, and this is why I'm promoting it, because then it taught
Um,
experience. Like it might
you
not be the best thing for you, but this is what I've done.
Yeah. You were at Madrid, speaking of Goad, essentially a Goad team. They were all so Christoph is Goad, Mia, you,
Is
Jamie.
Harold? No, I don't think he is he?
Oh, is he WAD proof maybe?
Wadproof, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, we were trying to think of it. So obviously we were Krypton because it was meant to be me, Jay, Danny, and Alec. Danny and Alec pulled out, but we couldn't change our team name. So I was trying to call it No Hustle, about like no ball and hustle made.
Oh
But
yeah.
then I hoped that it wasn't perceived that we meant no hustle at all. It was half no ball,
Yeah,
half.
okay, yeah.
And then we were going
Um
to go Wadproof because of Go Wad and Wadproof. But
yeah. No, I think yeah. That I'm glad you explained that actually because I was with the Krypton thing. I was like, is Dragon Athletics like is Krypton the name? I was like, is there two CrossFit
no,
Kryptons? That'd be
yeah,
weird.
it was so basically literally, I think 10 days before Danny and Alex said they couldn't do it, so we
Okay.
just had to like move really quickly, and the organizer had already printed all the boards and done all that stuff. So I was like, look, don't worry about the team name. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah. Um
So Crypto
okay.
European exposure because of us. I'll remember to bill them.
I actually think that's one of the first times I've ever gotten an athlete's deal wrong with Christoph. I think the when he was with the program, they're with GoWad, and that was
I think
my
the program just started with Go Wad, yeah.
yeah. So I'll use that as my excuse anyway. Not that I'm making excuses. I don't make excuses either.
The name's got
So
Wad in it. We'll let you off. The name's got Wad in it. Wad proof.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. GoWad's obviously better. So
Yeah.
when you joined up, because obviously Mia has got extensive team
Mhm.
experience. You have extensive team experience. Like, was it seamless? Was there like a because obviously it was like you mentioned there, quite quickly cobbled together. So was there like a oh wait, we just have to get on with it, or was there time to be like, no, this is what we need to do and how we do it?
Mate, honestly, it was probably one of the best weekends that I've ever had competing. Like, it was just four really good people who actually have never proper like we know Mia well. We know of Christoph. I've competed with Christoph, but we've never spent extensive time together. But it was just four really good people coming together and just having fun. And the Thursday, the day before the comp, we got to the arena. We got some practicing with the worm, and like each day as the events went on, we just got better and better and better. We just gelled really well. There wasn't a overpowering voice. We all took bits on from each people. Like Mia obviously contributed a lot from her experience in team as a four person.
Mm.
Um, Christoph came in with what he thought. We played on each other's strengths and weaknesses. We had a little mascot in Fraser Knox, which brought us all together.
Yeah, it's always nice to bring your kid to work.
Mate,
Um,
it is, and and take them round and get them to meet everyone, and
Shake hands and smile
yeah,
and yeah, get
hold,
pictures of people.
hold your bags, and
Yeah, a little school bag.
exactly.
Um, and like, is there? So you were like all very complimentary of the experience. Like anything I saw Mia saying like, "Oh, does anyone want to move? Anyone want to move to here for the year?" Um, is there a part of you that's like, would you consider going team, or are you solely
I
focused on
will
yourself?
I will go team again, but not this year or next year, in my
Is that
opinion.
because of like an unfinished business thing? Have you things that you want to do before you go team, or is it just you have it set out that time anyway?
Yeah, I've got personal goals that I set way back in 2017 when I first missed out on the games, because that was the first year that I really truly started to believe in myself and what I could do, and I know what I'm capable of, and I still think that I can achieve those things. So even with the last 2 years being as disappointing as they have, I still feel like I've improved. So yeah, we'll put them down as character building years. But yeah, there's definitely some unfinished business of what I think I can achieve before I want to finish my CrossFit career having a bit of fun doing team, because I just love team sports, man. And every time I compete as a team in CrossFit, it brings the best out of me in terms of effort, doing things with other people. And you could argue, well, why don't you just do that anyway? But I want to, I want to do what I want to do.
So what are the plans then for the next little while? What have you got coming up between say now and the Open?
So go Wad team for Wadapalooza, myself, Willie George, and Jeff Adler.
Oh wow.
Um,
How's your French?
Wow. So I actually said to Willie, should I be learning French? And he said that there's a bit of a disconnect between his and Jeffrey's French, so we're all good. So
Or we're all good is not the correct finish to that. So you're all bad. You're fucked. That's what that sounds like. They don't speak the same French, and you don't speak any French.
I'll jump on a few calls with Willie before and get some lessons of the vitals.
Yeah.
No,
That's
that'd
good.
be a hell of a team. I'm really looking forward to that.
Has that been announced?
It's not been announced as such because we've got to do the qualifiers next month in a couple of weeks.
You probably won't have to do qualifiers, will you?
Yeah, I think so. Because GoWod's not a sponsor of Wazza.
Well, where did Willie finish last year?
I don't think they won it. I think they're only inviting because Jamie's got an invite as an individual or team, and she's planning on going team as well.
Okay, because I think I was talking to Dylan yesterday because I was curious because they put out the 20 line or whatever. So I asked like how many people get invited versus like will that number go up to 50 or what? And he was like, oh yeah, 40 or 50 depending on who accepts. But he said that if someone podiumed in the last 5 years at Granite Games, Wadapalooza, or the games, they're getting an invite. Because did GoWad they podium? Did they not last year? The team, Willie's team.
It was it, yeah. So maybe they will get an
Maybe
invite.
they might get an invite then, yeah. Although it might have to be the same 3 or something.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe.
Are you going to wear like the berets and everything?
Mate, I'll wear anything. I don't mind.
That's cool.
I'll wear one of the tops that Nick Matthews wear if they tell me to.
And so then focus on Miami and then focus on Open and so on after that.
The focus will still be predominantly on individual for next season, but obviously with an eye of just making sure that I'm strong enough to rock it with the big boys because they're two big, strong boys.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You should probably just leave any barbells to Jeffrey. You can just watch.
Yeah,
and, like you and Willie can just stand back and then join in on the other ones.
It would be nice to be able to. They're very different athletes to me, so it'd be nice to be the same team as them, but also like see because even though we'll be a team working together, it'll still be good to try and throw down with them in the lifts and stuff because then that bodes well for the rest of the season, you know.
Yeah. Do you know Jeffrey?
From DFC, yeah, and briefly from our time at WIC crossover slightly.
Do you chat much to athletes? Like, as in, because say you've mentioned there, like, oh, I knew Christoph from competing against him, and then you've like Jeffrey there as well, and like Willie, like, is obviously he's a GoWad athlete as well, but mainly from competition, I suppose you'd know him. Like, are you personable when you're at competitions and stuff? Like, do you make time to talk to people, or do you just kind of hang with the same people?
So I love kind of just having a laugh at people in general, and trying to talk to people. Obviously, in a lot of individual comps. There's not, there's not that much people that, especially when it gets to semi-finals, you're competing against each other for a spot of the game. So some people don't like to be as personal as they would at different times, like Christoph competing at semis is very different to like me and Christoph competing at Madrid together, like Briggsy was always the best at it. She was always an absolute legend behind the comp floor, like chatting to everyone, having a laugh. But when it was time to like warm up and go and start competing, like she's in the zone, and that's what I try and pride myself to be as well, is like be myself right up until it's time to do the job. And then as soon as you've done the job, go back to being yourself again. It's almost like compartmentalizing yourself and as a person and as an athlete. Be yourself right up until you need the athlete to come out. And then when the athlete comes out, that's it then.
Yeah, I remember I interviewed Christoph before Strength and Depth, and I was like messaging him a bit, and he was like, "Oh, make sure and come up and say hello." And I was like, "No," like I was like, "You seem quite intense around competition. I do not want to approach you when something's happening." Like,
such a legend. He's so nice. And actually,
I've chatted to him a good bit, but I was like, that is not where I am introducing myself to someone mid competition. Like,
I couldn't believe even at Madrid, like he's off everywhere, speaking to everyone, kissing babies, all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't know anyone.
Yeah.
But that's what Fraggle's really good for me as well, because Fraggle obviously knows absolutely everybody. So Fraggle being Fraser, just in case.
Is he's like your you know, when you see the president shaking hands, like whispering the names, be like,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is this is Tia Toomey. And you're like
You know,
shaking hands.
Entourage?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's Turtle.
Oh yeah. Wow, that's a very good comparison.
Frags is Turtle from Entourage. And
That's
he's the
very
one that
good.
ends up more successful than everyone, right? So there we go.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. How did is it be so you said he was front of house at Yaz, and then he obviously worked with Wit, and then you were with Wit.
Yeah, so
So
our story's awesome, to be fair. So like um I arrived at Yas and Fraser was taking a gap year before going to university. So
how
his gap
posh.
year was working because he grew up in Abu Dhabi from the age of 8 or something like that.
Okay.
Went to school there. And he was the reception staff, the desk staff for Yas, yeah. And then so he then went to Cardiff, met university where I'd gone, but kept on coming back to Abu Dhabi in all of his school holidays, obviously. Um, and then we when he finished uni, we were doing a 3-month sabbatical in London for from Yas just to prepare for the 2019 season. And we were obviously living in London and going to Wit every day. And Wit were about to start hiring marketing, someone for marketing. So that's what Fraser's degree was in. So we just introduced Fraser to everyone from Wit, and then the rest he did himself, got himself the job, and yeah,
Yeah, he's done okay.
and he's doing very well for himself because that's the type of person he is.
Yeah. Um, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool. Um, After semi-finals then, so when you looking ahead, say to next season, taking into consideration, I suppose, the strength, um, oh, I don't want to say that. The strength and depth, the strength of the field at strength and depth. And then the fact that, you know, you had a niggle, you couldn't train properly coming into it. And your finish, despite the fact that you were injured going into it. When you take all of those things into account, are you like chomping at the bit for next season? Are you wary of next season? Like, did the strength of the field like scare you a little bit, or was it what you thought it was going to be? Was your space in it where you thought you'd be despite everything going on?
No, I think I had no idea how I was going to do. I actually also didn't even know if I was going to be able to finish the weekend because the first time I lifted was actually in the warm-up area. So the first time I'd done a clean and jerk for 6 weeks or front squat for 6 weeks was in the warm-up area. So I didn't even know if I was going to be able to go out after that or if my back was going to go again or anything like that. So my only concern going into semis was just do the best you can do in every workout. And there was only, to be honest, one workout where I felt like I got distracted, and that was in the chipper. But I think that was just because I was absolutely just smashed. And I just was like, oh my God, like I can't focus on anything other than my body's just saying, like, what are you doing to me right now? But no, mate, I mean, fields, the best lesson I ever learned, and this is why fields will never scare me, is 2016 games. We turned up, obviously, as the team, as CrossFit Yas. And I just remember walking into the first team briefing and looking around and just being like, holy shit, we are tiny little children in like an adult sport or something. Like, we are going to get murdered. And then obviously we podiumed, we came third. And I was a little bit like, oh, okay, you know, like, doesn't matter what you look like, you know, you can just, you know, it doesn't matter what the field is, like, you just do you play to your strengths, and, you know, um, the rest will look after itself.
Hmm. Is Fraser using one of those tennis racket fly swatter things?
Why, can you see it behind me? No.
I saw him picking something up, and I was like, "Is that one of those like electric?"
Jamie has a hatred for flies, an absolute, like, they're her arch enemies. Yeah, there she is in the background waving around.
My whole wife's family are weird about them. Like, I always thought it was just my wife. Where if there's
No,
a fly, she'll go into like a murderous rage, like running after
no,
it. And it's like, just fucking leave it. Like,
it's
it's
scary.
literally insignificant. It's not the size of your fingernail. Just let it off.
It's scary. She changes it. She changes into some person that I've never seen before.
I remember
Oh,
I was at
you're talking now.
I was at my in-laws' house over the summer, and we were eating outside, and they were all like, you know, like clapping. I was like, see, like, how is this any worse that like this is so much worse than just letting the fly around. Everyone trying to kill it for 20 minutes, knocking over glasses, like, you know, it's like flip the table just to get the fly. It's like, just fucking leave it alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, listen, thank you for coming on. It's been great to get to chat to you.
No worries.
I feel like
We'll probably have to
I've
do another one.
oh yeah, I feel like I've learned a lot about you, and I've, you know, it's confirmed things that I thought about you, and I'm glad it did. Best of luck with Wadapalooza. I'll see you there. I'm actually going to that as well, so that'll be fun. And best of luck with next season and everything else. And yeah, thanks very much, and enjoy your physio session.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.